live. Really excited to welcome my friend Eileen Fuller to the show today. Eileen is a implementation project manager with 20 years of experience in the healthcare industry and just has a really interesting take on a topic that I'm going to let her introduce, but we're just super excited to have you, Eileen. And I'll start with the same way we start every conversation and ask you what's on your mind.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So a lot on my mind, but really something I've thought a lot about is some of the qualities that we kind of bring to work and bring to the table in our day-to-day lives are often qualities that could deplete us as well. And so, along the lines of being reliable, adaptable, whatever these qualities are, at certain points we become kind of unsustainable because we're continuing to push through and push through. So really that's what ties into this concept of biological debt. That's kind of the way that I think of it, is you're really accumulating debt, or there's a cost to having certain behaviors, I guess, or adaptable behaviors that you've learned over time. And at a certain point, internally, you could be depleted, but externally, you could be looking like everything's going well. You could even be a top performer. And so that's kind of big thing on my mind, just from my lived experience, as well as kind of what I've seen in the workplace amongst others.
I totally resemble that. So I definitely know exactly what you're talking about, and for me, I think that was, it's always been something within my career of like, I'll just keep working. And actually, if things aren't going well, my reaction to it is to like, okay, I guess I got to just work harder and harder. And that's not always the best thing, but that's been kind of my take. So I totally resonate with that.
So Eileen, I have a question. Is this concept something the corporate world is aware of?
No.
So aware, or aware but not dealing with?
I don't think so. So this concept I've kind of just been playing around with for about a year, honestly. It really started with me trying to put things down on paper and try and process my own journey, I guess, of not realizing that I was quote unquote burnt out or depleted until I got smacked in the face with it and kind of saw what it was doing to me. I didn't even realize that I was at this point of kind of just no longer able to sustain the level of performance and what I was doing to myself. But it's not out there in the corporate world. I think it could be at some point, because really what it's based on is listening to the signals from your body, which is often the first place things start, whether it be like a pain in the stomach or headache and stress, not able to sleep, whatever it might be, listening to those signals and then kind of seeing what am I doing that might be contributing to that. And
I feel like they understand the corporate they understand that burnout exists. They just believe it's a character flaw.
Right. And that's an excellent point, is that's what I'm trying to get away from, is like, this isn't burnout. This is what leads up to burnout. Potentially, that's one outcome, could be burnout. But I'm curious to hear from you all. So do you have anything that comes to mind, like a behavior or characteristic that you've kind of had in your career and then realized, wow, like this is a great quality, but it's costing me something?
Yeah, I mean, I'll sort of pick up on what I was saying before and just say, for me, it's been that idea of like when I find that I'm not getting where I want to get to, or I'm not getting that promotion or whatever, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to work harder. And then I just keep working harder and harder. And I think what I've noticed is the people that I work for have always been like, that's great. We love that you keep giving us all of your discretionary hours and whatever, and like knock yourself out and let you burn yourself out, because ultimately there's a benefit, at least in the short term, for that. And so I think that's been something that, since I left the corporate world, I've had to work on a lot, is like, how do I, because I have a natural tendency to just do that in my own, like on my own, to myself, now that I've sort of learned to do it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in with this. There's a sort of level of internalization of the message you're getting from your work that I think is kind of troublesome, and then that I've certainly experienced in my career, which was, for example, and here's an example of it: a quote unquote leader, he was the CEO, but like whether he was a leader is a different question, of a company that I worked at, decided I couldn't present, that I wasn't good at presenting. And so for about 12 years, I think, or 10 years, I just decided I'm just not good at that. And so I ended up, taking that information in and internalizing it and making it sort of like, oh, this is just a characteristic of me. Now, the positive side of that is I'm taking, I care enough to make sure that I'm internalizing my responsibility to the company and whatever. That's ostensibly a good thing. But when you care enough to sort of take everything the company is telling you and have it, be detrimental to you, your career, your mental health, etc. Turns out I'm perfectly fine at presenting. I've done lots of presentations since I left that job. I've been on 103 episodes of a podcast or whatever. I'm totally fine. But I was convinced for years that I just was, hopeless in this. And so, yeah, that's sort of where it resonates with me. Elena?
Exactly. I was thinking as you were talking, and you became a podcaster. So I guess you're pretty all right of a presenter. So in my case, it is perfectionism, right? And it's one of those that we got to get everything in a perfect state. One, who is to be the judge, right? And two, what is perfect and where does it end? But the amount of stress that it imposes is unbearable often.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like that companies are more than happy to overuse their employees and take more of their time. But as soon as you need some support, or they need to pay for a coach for you or whatever it is, oh no, we can't do that. Like we can't invest in you, but you can invest in us. It's this, that, I don't know. It's just it's a weird dynamic.
Yeah, it's kind of paradoxical in a way, because I'm also that perfectionist type of personality, Elena, and it really led to a lot of stress, to the point where, it was like a persistent ache in my stomach. And it got normal after a while. That was just like, it was just there. And that perfectionism, just trying to raise the bar higher on myself. But nobody's really was asking me to do that. I was almost doing it to myself, but the company as well. Of course, they're going to reward that by giving you more work, or, so it's just such an odd paradox like that. Like things that you're doing to deplete yourself, you're getting rewarded for it. So you get stuck in the middle there.
Yeah, I like to call that, what you just described, I call it the curse of competence, right? Like the better you are, the more they give you. And you find that, like, at least in my career, I often have found that, like, you'll have situations where the same small group of people just keep getting more and more stuff piled onto them, because they are the ones that get things done. And and the people, but they're not necessarily people, by the way, who get rewarded for getting those things done, because often I think there's a thing that companies do where it's like, well, I can't promote Eileen, because if I do, I'm gonna no longer have this person who's really good at, like, doing all this stuff, so I can't promote her. And so what they do is they just keep giving you great reviews and telling you that you're doing a great job. Actually, I'm thinking of somebody who used to be on my team this had happened to her for years. I was sort of new to the team, but she had been for years been told, you're great, you're great, you're great, you're great. And she was like, just kept doing great work. And at some point she was like, Jeff, I actually have career aspirations. Like I want to do something. I don't want to just keep doing this. And why is it that you keep telling me I'm great and whatever? And I'm like, so I was new and I was like, okay, we're going to fix this. But clearly whoever it was before me was like, oh, this is fine. We're going to just keep doing this over and over again. But I don't know, I don't know. I'm actually, it's interesting because I can feel in my, like, as we're talking about this subject, and I can hear it a little bit in everybody's comments, like there's a little bit of like, almost like anger, like about it.
It's not almost anger. I still will have these flashes of just, or something will remind me of something that I was told that I was bad at or whatever it is. And I'll just have this kind of flash of like, just being right back in it. We call it corporate PTSD, but it is like, you can literally be kind of like emotionally brought back into that feeling of this. And I haven't worked at a full time at a internal to a company in 5 or 6 years now, and yet I still have that feeling of like, it's pretty brutal that it has like that kind of effect. Now, again, you can look at, I'm sure that CEO I was talking about would be like, well, that's his fault for blah blah blah. Well, okay, fine, you can step away from responsibility, but like, what does that say about a society that's like willing to, sort of damage the mental health of entire generations of workforce and then blame it on them for not being able to navigate? That seems it's not a very generous community who feels that way.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of there's a lot of burnout, number one, because of just the environment we're currently in, with people trying to adopt AI with maybe not the guidance that they need or the training that they need. And so it's just the amount of people, I think, that are impacted by this and don't really know how to like put words to how they're feeling, because you do look a lot like you're okay on the outside. At least I did for my personal journey. I mean, I was still managing to get things done, still doing my work, still talking to clients externally and managing projects. But internally, I was just going through the motions. Like nothing was a win anymore. Like we would get something done and it should be a celebration, but I didn't even feel that. It was like there was no emotion. It was to that point that it was like not even the wins didn't land anymore. And that's when I started to feel like, wait a minute, that is highly concerning, Yeah.
So. Well, it's interesting as you're talking about that. I'm thinking about in one of Brene Brown's books, she talks about this situation where there's this girl who, young woman, whatever, who just won gold at the Olympics. I don't remember what sport it was. And it's like a week later, she's sitting at the kitchen table and she's crying. And sorry, my screen just like went blank there for a second, so it was a little weird. But so she was crying, and her mother says to her, comes down into the kitchen and says, "What's going on? Like, you're amazing. You just won gold at the Olympics." And this girl says, "I thought I would feel different." And this sort of achiever's curse or whatever of like, that you're talking about, is like there's a point at which, like, actually, I'm going to get the brain science wrong, but like this idea that like we get dopamine hits, we don't get rewarded for achieving, we get rewarded for anticipating achievement. And that creates this thing where, like you were just talking about, it's like over time, you're like, okay, well, what's next? Right.
Yeah,
what's
the next thing?
What's the next thing? I actually had a guy that used to work for me, and I was talking to him maybe a year or so after I'd left the company, and he had just gotten promoted to director. And he had been on a pretty good trajectory of getting promoted I'd promoted him at least once, maybe twice. And when I worked there, and he said, I said, "Congrats on being promoted to director." And he says, "Yeah, I went home and I told my wife I got promoted to director." And her immediate reaction was, "How long before you start get, feeling, feeling the need to get promoted to VP, like, oof, like that's really totally true, right? Like we immediately jump to like, what's next? And so, I don't know. I think on the one hand, that's like that's, I guess, a sort of a problem that we all have, but it's also a problem that I think the work world takes advantage of. They know that that's going on. They know that like I'm going to keep dangling something in front of you, and you'll keep working for it. So.
Right. Elena, I'm curious to hear from you because I know you're in the healthcare world, the healthcare space, and I don't know exactly if you're within a male-dominated kind of industry, and I want to bring this up because there are certain adaptation behaviors I think that women tend to do that men may not. So I'm curious about your experience in the workplace related to that aspect. Like, have you ever felt that you had to kind of adapt or do something that maybe not be genuine to you because you're in any sort of male-dominated workspace?
Very male-dominated workspace, especially in tech, right?
Yep.
So that is a very male-dominated workspace. And, I grew up with a brother, so I actually kind of sort of understand how to socialize with, peoples, and I just try to exactly socialize that way. And generally speaking, just kind of step back and say, okay, this is not about the gender, whichever it is. This is much more about getting things done, and how do I get on the same page with this human rather than this whoever they are, because we're all very, very different. But what I would say is that for the longest time, the me that we brought to workplace was very different from me that we were, truly in our lives, right? And that I find more stressful than socializing with, people who are different, even if I'm very dominated by one group. This is a difficult transition, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make about that. The work persona versus the home persona, and sometimes you can get so lost in that work persona, it's hard to switch back, especially if you're working from home or just you don't have that transition time.
Actually, it's interesting because my wife still goes into the office. Like, she has a full-time job. She's like, or I should say now they're pushing to have her go into the office more. And it's interesting because I see this behavior that I know I was, absolutely did every single time I came home. I would just unload on her. Okay, this is what happened today, and this is the thing I feel like I screwed up and whatever. And I see her doing that. Like, she'll be like, oh, and I challenged this person, and I don't know if that was the right thing to do, whatever. And it's just kind of like this. We spend so much time at work, and then we come home and we spend a lot of time. I mean, you made the comment of like the bleeding of the personality. It seems like it's mostly coming back when you're coming home. It's really hard to shut it off. And even when you can shut it off, you have to at some point you have to process all this stuff that's going on and all these, emotionally charged things that you've dealt with all day that you're not allowed to be emotional about all day. And if you are, you'll have even more emotional stuff to deal with at work.
Well, and Eric, when you're telling that story, I'm thinking about somebody was talking to me the other day about this idea of revenge procrastination. Do you all know this concept where revenge procrastination is like you basically stay up like late, for like 2 hours scrolling on your phone because you're just looking for something to like you can't really unwind from work and you can't let it go, whatever. And so you just become kind of, obsessed with like, oh, I'm going to look for that next, dopamine hit or whatever from, whatever it is, Candy Crush or the news or whatever. But I'm interested, Eileen, you brought up this question of, sort of how gender plays into this, and I'm sure there are other sort of elements that could play into it as well. But I'm interested in what's you've worked in this tech space as well. How do you feel it's played into this conversation?
I think when I was younger, I would be that person that kind of shied away from expressing, ideas and whatnot. And that's just probably something that a lot of us evolve over time. When I'm in my 20s, just coming into corporate America, working for a Fortune 100 company, being in those rooms, was intimidating at the time. So, I wouldn't express my ideas. But as I evolved and kind of got to my more current roles, I've learned to really kind of sit back for a lot of the time, let people speak, but then jump in with, just a very succinct point, observation, question, whatever it may be. So that's my approach now. I think you don't learn when you're talking. So I try to kind of do less talking and more listening now. And that's been a kind of insightful way of dealing with things. And also just getting better relationships that way with the folks that I work with, male and female. But
I want to bring up another split with, there's obviously a gender split. There's a generational split as well. And you talked about this kind of, being a 20 something year old and how that impacts your like, oh, should I speak up or not? These people all know more than me. Or, the often some white male, but not always, is like who's 20 years old and thinks they're the God's gift to the company and won't shut up. I probably did too much of that when I was younger. But like Gen Z has this reputation and later have this reputation of taking a little more insisting on a bit more balance of their work-life balance and not taking the crap that I think that at least I think Gen Xers have been more than willing to put up with because we didn't know better. And I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on like the generational split. I think people kind of give Gen Z crap about this or have. I actually saw an SNL video recently. It was from 4 or 5 years ago. It was Carrie Mulligan was the guest, and she's like playing a young Star Trek ensign or whatever who tries to speak up during a crisis, and they're making fun of like the fact that you're not listening to my feelings or whatever. And here's this like, cultural moment. I'm sure very few people have seen this, but this cultural moment where they're making fun of people for caring about that mental health, and like it's the butt of the joke. But actually, this conversation makes me think there's a complicated. It is more complicated than the way that just like, oh, look at these, snowflake Gen Zers who can't handle, Well, I'm not sure that the Gen X approach was that great. In fact, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. So, there's probably a balance, but I don't think the balance is as close to the older generation's approach as we probably, people in this my generation think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pipe in quickly on that one. I do think that there's a lot to be learned from some of these other generations. I'm a big advocate for trying to seek out a younger person that joins the company, and we can learn so much about, all the different generations. You can learn so much because we all are approaching work different ways, and not obviously it's not everyone's the same that is in Gen X or whatever, but there is a common themes that you see throughout the generations, and they may be onto something, the younger folk, in terms of more of a balance and kind of how can you blend that work and home or work and personal type situation a little bit better than some of us who just grind until it kind of wears you to the point of.
I also think there's this whole political and social discussion about affordability and whatever. And I think that part of the Gen Z approach is like, look, the deal is you give us enough money so that we can afford a life and a house and a car and whatever. And we give it, this was the Gen X approach, right? And probably before, you give us enough money so that we, can have a decent lifestyle, and we'll shut up about it and we'll overwork ourselves or whatever. And Gen Z's like, you guys aren't even, balancing our overwork with enough, resources, or their salaries may be going up, but the price of everything is going up much faster. And certainly housing prices are just out of control. And so I think that may be part of what we're seeing with the generation is like, this deal sucks.
So I also think that they, at least our children, have been watching us what we do, right? And we do it way over hours, and we work a lot. And they look at us and they say, "Do I want to do it like you?"
Right. And I think I'll take that even a step further is we work way over hours, we work really hard, and then they see us just randomly one day getting laid off or whatever it is. And they're like, wait, to Eric's point, like, what, you end up with it's not a great deal, right? Like, what is in this for me? And so I think, Elena, your point is well taken. It's like, they're literally watching the people who come before them and go, why would I do that?
Like, you guys are dumbasses. What is your problem?
Seriously though. Well, and I think you do have a great point there. And also just, if you're someone who, and I got to this point, admittedly, someone who couldn't shut it off right away from the work. You're on calls back to back all day. You haven't even been able to process every phone call you've had, and then you have the emails and the pings on your phone and it's very hard to be present. And if you have children, it got to the point where like I was present in the room, but I wasn't present like in the situation. Like in my head, it was going through all the work stuff. And so, or being a little more short fused, that type of thing. So there is impact to your family extensively in hindsight. And so that's something just that I've noticed and be more mindful of, is having that kind of a transition process, whatever it is, 15-minute walk after, and saying, okay, we're moving from work mode to home mode, so you can be more present in your off hours of work.
So that's a great subject, Eileen. You are segueing, and what could be done?
Exactly. So this I've thought a lot about, is the what can be done about all of this. And I surely don't have all the answers, but I think the first step for me anyway was just identifying the signals in my body. Like if I feel myself tensing up, and just kind of be more in tune with my body and understanding, okay, that's a signal, like something, I need to kind of think about this for a minute before I jump right in. So a good example would be being a yes person. If you're one of those yes people, like before you even check your calendar or your workload, you're saying yes to a new project. It's feeling that like stress and saying, okay, wait a minute, like I'm feeling that stress. Hold on a minute and pause, and let's like look at the situation first before I say yes. And so little things like that is just being aware, I think, is the first step. It's for me anyway, that's kind of what I've been working on.
If I can jump in on that, because it's so interesting, and I feel like this point that you just made comes up in so many different places in so many different ways, which is this idea of so much of what we need to learn to do over the course of our careers is to become more mindful. And it's so fascinating. I feel like, maybe we should maybe knock out like some topic of high school or whatever, that it just isn't that important anymore. Like let's cut geometry down to a couple weeks, skip all the, proofs or whatever it is. Just be like, okay, the triangle.
AI can do that.
Right, AI can do that. But what AI can't do is what you were just talking about, which is take a breath, pause, think for a second, don't react, and so much of the things that go wrong in the workplace or even in any really human relationship is because we react. Somebody says something, we misunderstand it, or we just interpret it through our lens, we react in the wrong way, whatever. And it's like, to your point of like, when that boss asked you to do that thing, did they actually expect you to say, yep, I'll get it to you tomorrow? Or were they just like, just musing, like, I wonder if we could do this. Okay, I'll take it on. Like maybe they would, maybe they didn't care. Maybe they wanted you to push back. You don't know, but you are jumping straight to that conclusion. And so I don't know. I feel like we sort of look at mindfulness as this kind of like, woo, that's kind of out there or whatever. But it's like, no, actually, that is one of the most important skills that we can learn as humans.
The only thing I would say, Jeff, is my children and your niece or nephew has a language teacher that does just that. Like the first 10 minutes, like she had like has them like do like meditation or whatever. And my child thinks that is the most ridiculous waste of time that they have ever experienced. Well, they're supposed to be learning whatever, French, Spanish, whatever it is. And like, anyway, I'm trying to be a little cagey about get someone in trouble. But
10 minutes might be a little long for a child though, like to keep the, it's shout out to my dad. He's really into meditation and whatnot. And you can even accomplish a lot through a 5-10 minute, well, I won't go 10 minutes, but even 1 minute, 2 minute.
Yeah. Right.
Stopping for a minute and setting an intention for the day or whatever it is.
Well, I think the essential oils the teacher was like going around dotting on their wrist or whatever, I think was like put my child over the top.
Well, that actually sounds like maybe it is a little over the top. Eileen looks shocked. Like
yeah, I'm surprised. Is this a
no? This is a public school in my town, and I was like, that sounds wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, I don't want to distract, but it was a funny story I thought I could throw into.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Eric, because I mean I wasn't even thinking about like 10 minutes of meditation. I was thinking of like a 2-second breathe, think before you react.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of in the book that I'm developing is kind of giving some of the techniques that are literally 1 minute techniques that you could use during the day at work, because you're not going to be stepping away for 10 minutes of meditation probably, but yeah, the breath work, or just like being able to release your shoulders down when they're up like this, before you're stepping into the next thing, if you are able to have that time in between calls or whatever. But yeah, there's 1 minute practices that really do, and through neuroscience, they've proven to really help you kind of bring down and focus. So
it was you made me think of, there's this book that I read last winter called I think it's The How of Happiness is what it's called. And it basically goes through all the research about what actually makes you happy. And it turns out that the research would show that like winning the lottery does not make you happy. It actually makes you like, you'll be happy for a minute, and then 2 weeks later you're like, okay, now I'm just stressed out about what to do with all this money, whatever. People get sort of returned to this baseline of happiness. But interestingly, like the things that we sort of like kind of are like, well, that doesn't, and I'm not going to go essential oils, Eric, but but journaling, for example, and writing down something you're grateful for every day is actually, the science says that will make you happier. And we sort of look at it and go, well, that's just kind of like, out there crazy stuff. But so I do think it's interesting, to your point, Eileen, about like, there's actually some science around this. Like if you pause for a second, it's like, it's not all kind of out there stuff. It's just learn to do this. And then that's where I think we don't train people. We don't give kids those skills, because we kind of see them as not important, but they actually they might be more important than knowing whether, a trapezoid is, lateral or whatever.
Sounds like
on that very important angle. we are over the 30-minute mark. So before we continue the conversation, we should probably go around and have everybody's, the continuation of the conversation would be our saying one thing that we want to leave our audience with. So Eileen, we always have our guest kick this segment off. So what's one thing you would like to leave our guests, our watchers and listeners with?
I think it would kind of be tying into what Jeff was just saying, is keeping an open mind about some of the little things that we can do that will help us break some of the patterns that we have maybe had since we first got in the workplace. And for some of us, that is decades long, and breaking behaviors can be tough. So just keeping an open mind to some things that people might call woo-woo or whatever that is. I think that's the term they usually use. But yeah, that would be my takeaway, is kind of give it a try. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work for you, but give things a try and just experiment and see what helps.
Eileen, before I give my one thing, if people want to connect with you, reach out to you, what's the best way to do that? LinkedIn
would definitely be the best way to contact me. Do you need me to give my LinkedIn name, or are you going to?
You could just, so it would just be, well, I'm sure if they look up Eileen Fuller, they'll find you.
Yeah, not a common name. So I think find me.
Like for Jeff Siegel, there's just me, and then there's a guy that's like has some kind of auto like a car dealership or something. But Eric we once accidentally got another Eric Siegel on the show, because
somebody had miss whatever you call it. They'd miscalled out this other guy instead of me on LinkedIn. And so when he responded, I think you meant a different Eric Siegel, I was like, hey, you want to be on the podcast?
That's funny.
He was awesome.
Smooth Eric. Good presenter, by the way.
Yeah, he was great. But anyway, Eileen, thank you. This is such a great topic, or an important topic. And I think for me, the one thing is just, I don't know that there's an answer to it, but like moving beyond, like, how do you get people to be more sort of aware of this for themselves, is how do you get us as a society, as a corporate culture, to recognize that, like, we actually don't get more out of people by pushing them into these modes where they're overworked, multitasking, whatever. Actually, the belief that you're getting more productivity and the actual reality of it, I think, do not match up in the way that people think. And so I think this question of how do you create, so I appreciate how do you create more awareness of this, not just for individuals, but for companies thinking about, like, how do we support our people? So I'll pass it over to Elena.
Yeah, so to me, when we at work, we look at everything as resources, and we allocate the resources, we prioritize the resources, we KPI, we ROI, la-di-da-da. We need to look at ourselves as a resource and be very smart in how we manage ourselves as a resource. So that's my takeaway.
That's great. I actually have one non-serious and one more actually serious take here. The non-serious one that I hadn't figured out a way to fit into the conversation before is one of the rabbit holes I go down when I'm doom scrolling sometimes, is these, like, they tend to be like a cartoon of, like, people at work and how they're like, there's these, situations where they're being, like, manipulated and they're pushing back or whatever. It's just something that I gravitate towards, probably because of the anger we were discussing. Yeah, you show. Anyway, but the other thing I would just say is, I do think there's we need to denormalize the sort of ownership that companies feel over their staff's lives, their staff's attention, their staff's LinkedIn presence, whatever it is. And we need to normalize supporting people through, complexity in their work lives and relationships, instead of looking at it as a cost that is, a nice to have well, not even a nice to have. It's an extremely nice to have cost. And that is never actually, almost never followed through, especially for middle managers and individual contributors. Maybe they'll give that support to some of the upper levels. And even then it's probably inadequate. So that's kind of my thing, is like, we need to change some of what we find normal, at least in the sort of American system, US system. I doubt we'll see that any time in the near future, but hopefully with
our kids coming into the workforce with a completely different view, they will push the workforce to change, right? The structure will resist, and they will, of course, go way over, as it always is. But hopefully the system will budge a bit and be more accommodating of them than it was of us.
Yeah, except for the fact that, like, well, if Gen X is like the boomers, then we're just never going to let go.
That's right. We'll be working.
They're still running the world and doing whatever, and we're still waiting for our chance, and then we're going to probably do worse.
We'll keep grinding until we're 80 or something, you know.
Exactly. Anyway, this was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Eileen.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
We look forward to hearing more about what where you're headed and where things are going. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.